Hello, welcome back to Teen Story Share. This week we're reading from Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna Ruth Meyer. And last week we read the first two chapters. If you missed that, you might want to listen to those first, so I'll put the link down below. And just as a little reminder for those of you who were following along, we heard from one chapter told by the Wood Witch's youngest daughter, who used to be a tree before she was turned into a daughter. And then we heard from Owen, who's the other main character, who lives on the edge of the woods and helps his father with his astronomy work that he does for the king. And also Owen's mother disappeared 1 or 2 years ago and was taken into the wood. Alright, let's continue. Chapter 2, Owen. It may be spring, but the chill of winter lingers when the evenings come, so I shovel coal into the downstairs stove before I start cooking supper. I'm a fair cook, which is not generally thought dignified for a boy, but I enjoy it. The rhythm of chopping vegetables, the satisfaction of stirring flour and butter and sugar together to make Abuela's favorite little cakes. I'm proud that I've kept all three of us alive since the day Mother was lost to the wood, even though it meant leaving school a year early. Tonight, I stir a caul in a pot bubbling on the kitchen stove and mix tea-soaked dried currants into my bara brith dough. I shape the dough into loaves and leave them to rise overnight. They'll go straight into the oven in the morning. Abuela wakes up from her nap and comes darting out into the kitchen, wrapping herself around my legs and giggling as I walk with her attached to me. When? She cries, pleased. Father steps through the door just as I am spooning caul into the 3 bowls, and Abuela launches herself at him, searching his pockets for the chocolates she knows he's tucked away for her there. She finds half a dozen, which I confiscate from her, promising she can eat them after dinner. Father pulls off his boots, hangs his cap on its wall peg, and stretches, his skin weathered and tanned from his long days of work in full view of the sun. He perches his spectacles onto his nose. He never wears them in the fields, for fear of breaking them, then washes up and comes to sit at the table. We eat, and afterward Abuela plays on the floor by Father's feet while he reads his newspaper, glancing down at her affectionately every minute or so. I step outside for more coal, shoveling it into the coal scuttle from the bin outside the kitchen. The bin is running low. I'll have to walk into the village soon to buy more. Long ago, the people of Terrian burned wood in their fireplaces, just like Scythe and Gwyde across the mountains. Some people still do, if they can't afford coal, collecting loose twigs or branches the wind has broken off. Only the greatest fools would dare cut down a whole tree. King Elinian tried to burn the Gwydden's wood once, in the early days of his reign. He scorched miles of trees, and she retaliated by slaughtering an entire village of people. He thwarts her in different ways now, with the train, with the telegraph wires running for miles under the ground to make communication with Scythe and Gwyde swift and cost-effective. But if the king's man is to be believed, she's finding her own ways to fight back. I return to the house, lugging the coal. The mantel clock chimes 8, and I scoop up the protesting Abuela for bed. She gives Father 4 slimy kisses, and then I take her off into her room, changing her back into her little nightgown, tucking the covers up to her chin. "Story, Wen," she says in her high, squeaky voice. "Story." I tell her the story I do most nights, about the man who watches the stars, about his wife who goes away on a long journey and can't find her way back to him. She makes herself into a star so he can always see her, so that, in a way, she can always be with him. Abuela doesn't understand, but she likes the sound of my voice, the familiar rhythm of the story. I turn down her lamp and kiss her forehead and shut her door. Out in the main part of the house, Father has already gone, his newspaper and spectacles absent from their place on the little end table by the stove. I don't know how late he stays up reading every night, before falling asleep in the room that must feel empty without my mother. But I do know it's up to me to fulfill his contract with King Elinian, as it has been every night since my mother was lost. I set our stew pot to soak in the sink and climb up to the observatory. I light the lamp on the worn wooden desk that waits beside the telescope. and absently spin the rings of the brass armillary sphere my father brought back from his university days. I put the kettle on the stove that hugs the back wall and make a pot of cinnamon tea. Its potent, sweet scent fills the whole room. Then there's the dome to open and the telescope to adjust. This evening's empty star charts to take from their drawer and lay out on the desk. I settle into a chair in front of the telescope and peer into the eyepiece. Thankfully, the storm has broken apart, so I have a clear view as the sky grows dark. The planet Cariad is the first to rise, bright near the horizon. I mark its position on the first of tonight's charts with a scratch of my pen. I wait for more planets to appear, watching for Red Roval and the paler Negeziv, and of course the first of the stars. There are millions of stars in the sky, and scientists speculate there are millions more we can't see, even with the aid of telescopes. What I do every night, what my father used to do before my mother was lost, is mark down the positions of all the stars we possibly can. The ones that make up the constellations, the ones between and around the constellations, the planets, the phases of the moon. I have an empty chart for each position of the telescope, with curved lines marking the path of the ecliptic. There's one whole chart to mark the arch of the wind, the spray of stars that look like handfuls of snow strewn across the sky. The stars are predictable. That's what I like best about them. I have been charting them by myself for a whole year now, watching them move in their set patterns across the celestial sphere. I really don't know why the king hired my father to do this, why he demands secrecy. When I was younger, I used to pore over the charts looking for patterns and predictions. There are stories about the constellations, about the movements of planets, and their proximity to each other predicting the future, plotting out the events of your life. But I've only seen order, wonder. Besides Abuela and my parents, the stars are what I love best in the world. Slowly, methodically, I begin the process of charting the stars, shifting the telescope to a new part of the sky when each chart is full. I've marked only 3 charts when the observatory door creaks open, and I look back to find my father there, his spectacles perched on the end of his nose. His presence surprises me. He looks exhausted, as he has ever since my mother was lost. But there's a determination in his eyes that's been gone so long I forgot it was ever there. "May I join you?" he asks, hesitant, as though he fears I'll turn him away. I grin. "Of course, father. I've only been keeping up the work in your absence." "I'm not chasing you away," he clarifies. A knot I didn't know had formed in my chest loosens again. I pop up from the desk and drag a second chair over. Father pours himself some tea, and we settle in together, taking turns at the telescope, trading off marking the stars on the charts. Contentment fills me. I've missed my father. He has been here, and yet not here, gone in a different way than my mother. This is how it used to be. My father teaching me how to chart the stars, the 2 of us staying awake long into the night, drinking cinnamon tea. The work goes faster with him there, and when the charts have all been filled and bound safely in their folder to be given to the king's man at the end of the month, father and I linger in the observatory. I get the feeling that he has missed this, perhaps even more than I have. "Owen," he says, as the lamp burns low and we drain the dregs of our tea, "can you forgive me?" "There's nothing to forgive, father." His brow furrows, and he puts his hand on my shoulder. "We would have been lost if not for you. The king's coin, the house, little Abuela. Without you holding us all together, I don't know what would have become of us. I shouldn't have left you to fend for yourself." My throat hurts. The subject is perilously close to Mother's absence, which I'm not sure either of us have the courage to discuss just now. I've been all right, really. God gave me strength enough. Father smiles at me, setting down his tea mug to place his hands on my shoulders. "I am blessed to have such a son, but I have too long neglected you, Abuela as well. It's time for you to start thinking about learning a trade, apprenticing with someone in the village. You're old enough now." I stare at him, entirely blindsided. "I don't want to learn another trade. I'm going to be an astronomer like you. Besides, you need me to keep the house and watch Abuela, help chart the stars." Father shakes his head. "Let me worry about Abuela. I need to get both of you away from here before the wood..." The word chokes him. He takes a breath. Before the wood winds itself into your souls. It's something I should have done long ago. I can't lose either of you. I won't. I want to point out that we've been perfectly safe for the last year, but I think of the music oozing more often than not from the trees, of Abuela stretching up her tiny hand to reach the branch hanging over the wall, of myself hanging out the observatory window. If you would rather, you can attend Scythe University in the fall, Father continues. I've put money aside for it. His forehead creases, and I know he's thinking of my mother. They met at the university. She was a cellist, and he an astronomer, and they used to tease each other that they would have to live on love, since their professions would take them nowhere. My throat tightens. Father, I'm not going to leave you. He claps his hand on my shoulder as he rises. You are young yet. There's plenty of time to think beyond the confines of this house and the sky. Just promise me you'll consider it. You don't have to make a decision immediately. I get up, dousing the lamp and following him from the observatory. I'll consider it, I tell him. I don't mean it. I may only be 17, but all I've ever wanted is the sky. Alright, join us back next time to learn what happens next. Have a great weekend. Bye!